Hi, welcome back to FutureFast, and we once again have Philippe Rixhon with us. And before we continue with our conversation, as the second part of our conversation, for those of you who have come in for the first time, FutureFast is a platform where we bring in people who are doing things that are bound to have an impact on the future. And the whole idea of these conversations is there something that we can draw, some kind of pointers, some suggestions, or some thoughts, some thought process that we could potentially employ in our own businesses or life. That's the whole idea of Future Fast. And those of you who have missed the first part of our conversation with Philip, please look it up. It shares his journey in that, and you will be able to stitch it together as where we are with this conversation. And like always, enjoy the ride while I jump in straight. Philip, thank you once again for making time to join us.
I'm thanking you, Andrew.
Well, Philippe, you took us through in our last conversation about your journey. So today, can you tell us what does Philippe Rixhon Associate do?
One of the simple answer is that Philippe Rixhon Associate is employing me. So what that means is that in many countries in Europe, it is a normal setting for, let's call them freelancers, right? Self-employed people to act or to be active within a company, which basically they are the only employee. So that's a setting, a very classical setting for many different industries, different professions here in Europe. I don't know how you do that in India.
Well, in India, we have something called one-person company.
So. Yeah, so I think it's something very similar. The company is exactly 40 years old. The company was established in 1983 in Switzerland and moved with me to England in 2003. So that's a bit of the history. Now, when I say that I'm the only employee of Philippe Rixhon Associate, this is a correct statement. But sometimes there is not more than one person working on the Philippe Rixhon Associate project, and sometimes there are many people, which means I contract them or I partner with them to do a very large project. So that is, if you want, the setting. No, your question is not about the setting. Your question is about what is this thing doing, right? So when I created the company in 1983, it was to pursue one of my ideas at the time, which was to interlink very different type of computers so that I could speed up processes between different departments which are using different type of computers. And that is typically the case in the manufacturing industry. So on one side, you have engineers developing new pieces of hydraulics or machinery, etc. It was the beginning of CAD, computer-aided design, and they have very special computers that we called at the time scientific computers. Then you have all the administration, the accounting, purchasing, all of them. They were working on mainframes. We can call that 40 years ago commercial computers. Then it was the very beginning of the personal computers. And when you look at those very sophisticated machine, automated tool lathes, etc., they had kind of computer to guide how they were functioning. So my idea was, if you can interlink all those very different type of machine, you will speed up the process in the manufacturing industry. So that's the reason why I created the company. Okay. And I did in Germany a first project in that direction. which was in Germany one of the two, because we were two without knowing each other, one of the two first computer integrated manufacturing project. And I was working in a company producing a lot of relatively small pieces in series. And the colleague, which I did not know, was working on a very different type of industry, making single huge turbines. And at the time, what happened is that I got interested in what was called, and is still called, artificial intelligence, and I created one of the very first configuration expert system. So on one side, you have a customer explaining the type of forces and times, etc., that they need to move certain extremely complex piece of equipment. And on the other side, you have the company I was working with, which needs to manufacture the hydraulic systems to produce those forces. And I managed to encapsulate in a system the knowledge of top experts and integrate this in all the rest I was doing for that company. So it was not only computer integrated manufacturing, but it did include expert systems. And that is what Philippe Rixhon Associate was doing in the 80s. My job has been then observed or seen by a large company I can name. I'm very proud that I've worked with them. Framatome in France, they are still there. The other guy building nuclear power plants. They were interested in what I was doing, and then I started to work in technical diagnostic with them. And we even created products, IT systems, to make that technical diagnostic, not only in the nuclear industry, but also for airplane, or also for very sophisticated machine in the food industry, or I have to say also in the cigarette industry. So a period then of a long period of working on technical diagnostic. And then from that company, I joined large companies, one of them being Accenture, where I worked mainly on electronic commerce. And after that, 20 years ago, exactly 20 years ago, Philippe Rixhon Associate was back as a fully independent entity, working in media and entertainment. But as I already told you,
how did you move into media and entertainment, coming from this core engineering businesses?
That's an interesting personal question. So, point well taken. So you 1983 to 2003, 20 years high tech. So nuclear power plant, airplanes, etc. And then suddenly 2003, media and entertainment. Well, the reason is that at the time we were living in the Middle East, the family, and we wanted to do something else in a different country, stick lovingly together, which is still the case. And we were wondering, my wife and I, and we had to think about our daughter, where are we going now? What do we want to do? And we picked London. So we came to London, we are still here. And my intention was to do the same thing. Maybe that's the only thing I can do, systems. But for media and entertainment, because I was really already as a young man, I was attracted, and I did some theater. And I thought, if you want to be serious building systems for the media and entertainment industry, you better know deeply at least one of this creative art. And then I embarked in 2003 in two very extensive years of studying theater. So I did study theater, not really to be on stage, but to have a very deep understanding of the field. So I study scenography, mainly with French professors. I study acting in Moscow, and I study directing in London. So by 2 years intensive study, I had a very good understanding of theater, which of course is not that far away from film or TV or music. And even when you look at the playwright, it is not far away from literature. Then I started to build systems. So Philippe Rixhon Associate and a spin-off of my company, we build systems for media and entertainment. So we build. Yes, go ahead.
You actually took 2 years break to go and study all these things?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
So the answer is yes. That's a simple answer. And then I was there very early 2006, and I started to build systems in media and entertainment. And one of them was augmented simulcast. So we took a concert, and it was a real-time broadcast of the concert. The real-time broadcast was available on TV. It was available in cinema due to fiber optics. It was available on radio. It was available on the internet. And it was, first of all, it was a real-time broadcast. But then people at home in front of their telly, or people in the movie theater in front of the large screen, they also had their smartphone. And on the smartphone, we had not only a sophisticated program. You see the type of program you receive when you go to the opera or to see a musical, but they had the subtitle of the songs scrolling in real time at home in the language of their choice.
So this is when? Which year was this?
That's a type of, that was 2013. And before that, yes, and I may say so far, that type of technology has not been repeated by anybody. So we are still the first who have done augmented simulcast that way. We were able to splice during the real-time broadcast of the concert, little rushes of documentary that we prepared in advance. And we knew, for example, that the pause or the interval or before, when people enter the concert hall, but they are not yet full sitting, etc. We were using all that time to splice in real time, prepared documentary rushes explaining the concert. So this thing is a fabulous way to broadcast concert. Now, in the meantime, Nanju, we got pandemic, and many people wanted to see music, and music had to be broadcast. People were not able to go to concert. And I'm a bit puzzled that nobody started to see what we have done and exploited big scale, because of course we were not doing big scale. We did one major project. It was very risky, but we succeeded. And another things we have done was a platform for choral singing. So the popular way of people coming together and singing together as amateur, but also with professionals. And we deploy that in cities, in Berlin, in Brussels, in Newcastle, and in Namsos, which is a town in Norway.
Oh, these are all for live venues.
It was a platform so that people could come together, learn why singing was good for them, learn how to sing, find choral groups that they could join, find venues where they could go and sing together.
So it's an online platform.
Yeah, it was a platform. And the result of this is interesting, because there is a legacy of that project which lasted 2 years. And the legacy is, on one side, a yearly festival in Brussels about singing, for the whole population of the city, and a much larger national deployment of singing and choral singing in Norway. So interestingly, we prove something, but in this case, we have interesting legacy. Other system I've done was the beginning of in-video commerce. So you watch something, music typically, a concert, and then you are interested by the guitar of the guitarist. You click on the guitar, you can buy the guitar. and that was fully automated. We created a platform which allowed fans to co-design merchandise for big stars.
These are on the pre-recorded videos, or even while the live streaming is happening, like let's say
Yes,
now.
it was. In this case, it was pre-recorded video. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it was with two major partners, a very big IT company, and one of the best, if they are not the best, company doing huge system to broadcast live sports. And as you know, the broadcast of live sports is way more developed as the broadcast of news. They are similar to news, but they are much better than the broadcast of concert or theater, etc. So interactive, you can use your smartphone, etc. So we did that with them. And that was the big story, if you want, until 2016, 2017, because since 2009, we got deeply involved, because next to me, of course, there are always colleagues and contractors, etc., involved in copyright matter. And I was able to do the two work, fan engagement, so the type of system I described, and working on copyright in parallel until 2018. But then in 2018, I was so busy with copyright matters and intellectual property rights as data managers, right, that I opted to focus only on that. So since 2000...
But until that point of time, there was no blockchain, right? Fan engagement.
That is correct. I never used blockchain, not 1 second for fan engagement. I came to blockchain in 2016 by an accident. And when I discovered blockchain, I understood that it would be interesting not only to manage copyright data, but also for fan engagement. Which is a domain that for the moment I'm not really touching. So with my colleagues, we are using blockchain in the domain of copyright data, but we could also use blockchain to have a different type, a much more interactive, much more participative connection between artists on one side and fans on the other side.
Right. In the current format of rights management that you're doing, is that done through a platform? So artists become register on your platform and then list on their creatives, and everything is done through the platform, or how is the current rights management product?
Okay, so the story is in 3 parts until now. 2020, roughly, we built a demonstrator of our ideas, and we published a white paper. In early 2021, that was done. Then came an interest of the Estonian government in what we were doing, and they helped us to build a prototype. And that was 2021, 2022. As we were building the prototype, new laws emerged in the European Union called Data Governance Act, which set a new way to intermediate data between parties.
Right.
And while we were doing the prototype, technically, this law appeared, and we thought, oh, that's interesting. We could focus our work on exchanging data between rights holders, so let's say artists, journalists, photographers, TV producers, and rights users, well, typically the large platform, YouTube, Spotify, Netflix, etc.
Studios, right.
So that was the idea. And we honed and tweaked, all of that. So all that was completed 9 months ago, 2022. Now we have, so step 1, demonstrator, step 2, prototype. Now we are really far, very far, in defining the minimum viable product. So that's where we stand for the moment. We will start to code it in a few weeks. But we, of course, you imagine the huge amount of work in functional architecture and technical architecture.
Wonderful.
So now to answer even better your question, artists or companies or whoever will come in front of a nice user interface, or they will use APIs, of course, and they will declare their rights. So they will, and you declare your rights by doing basically 2 things. You upload the digital asset. We identify the asset, we fingerprint the asset, we create a very unique identifier for the asset. Next to that, we receive data about the asset and about the creators. We store all of that in a sophisticated way so that on the other side, if you want, users can come and can get answer to the question, what is what? So what asset are we speaking about? Who is who? In the sense, who is the creator? Who is the rights holder? Who is the publisher? Who is the licensor? Then who did what? Then who owns what? And what are the conditions to use that asset? That's all what we do. We don't do more than that, which means that we are not active in the domain of licensing or distribution or remuneration, but we are the one preparing all the data for the next step, which is licensing.
So basically, right now, if I can put it, that what you're doing right now is some sort of a catalog management of all the right holders.
I think I would be more modest. I can say yes, catalog. If you reduce the catalog, in our case, to the rights management information.
Right. In the context of rights management, it's a
yes,
catalog.
Then you can call it a catalog. Yes.
Right. So you could potentially offer it to anybody else who wants to do rights management. It can be, you can provide an API into it, or you also foresee that you yourself will build a licensing application built into it, or a dApp built into it, so that people can do that, or somebody else does that. So you will also build, and they could also do. So you could make it open. I mean, which way are you looking at it?
Interestingly, you said that I can do that. Well, the answer is that I must do that. And the reason is the law. That type of service, called data intermediation service, must be non-discriminatory. So, which means that anybody who wants to declare their rights in our system must be able to do so. Even though sometimes, of course, if they need to pay a little bit to do so, but we cannot exclude anybody. Similarly, on the other side, if you are on the search side, the query, we cannot prevent anybody, respecting, of course, terms and conditions, etc., to come and use our data. So one of the interesting things about this new type of service, data intermediation service, is that it must be extremely secure, and it is monitored by the state, so that the state guarantee, well, those guys are doing a proper job, and it is non-discriminatory. So we must offer the service to everybody. When I say so, I speak about the 27 member states of the European Union. But we are not developing a second system for the other countries. We have only one system. And that single system will work on the same principle for anybody in India wanted to declare their rights on our system, or anybody from India wanted to search our system. So if you want, we could even, I don't want to say that it is a constraint, because for us it's an opportunity that system, that law is an opportunity. But we will follow that, definitely, not only for the 27 member states of the European Union, but worldwide.
Well, that's interesting. We could probably take that conversation separate. So, is there anybody else doing this something similar to it? How are they faring with this effort?
Of course, I have a very limited view on the world, so I don't know who is doing what where, right? So,
No,
what
in your
I think,
region.
I think we are relatively unique in the sense that we are using emerging legislation and we are using emerging technologies in a way where all what we do is, I use your term because it's a good term, an open catalog, not a closed catalog.
Wonderful.
For the moment, in our region, but also, I guess, elsewhere in the world, there is less people using emerging legislation, which is an art, right? Using emerging technologies to open up the rights data catalog.
Well, Philippe, I met online. I've been in touch with a gentleman. It was with regards to some Web3 event that we got connected, and we've been discussing for last 6-8 months now. I think we've kind of got to know each other pretty well. And he was talking about building a very similar product.
Okay.
Incidentally, he did send a pitch deck. He's looking at raising some funds. He was also looking at talking to some investors. He's from Paris.
Mm-hmm.
And he did travel to London and I think pitched in a couple of media entertainment businesses. So I'm not sure if you didn't, seems like you didn't come across them.
Not yet, but feel free to introduce us to each other and so we'll speak.
Sure thing. Let me talk to him and share this with him because
Yes.
he wanted to build something like this, but his idea was more from a point of monetizing it for the artists and the creator.
Yes, and that is a clear distinction between many on that side, on the side of monetizing, on the side
Right.
of collecting money on behalf of artists. There are many developments.
Right.
We stopped before that, so we stopped before even the licensing.
Correct. So tell me, Philip, now that you've also been in this space for so long, there is something more of a collective effort that I'm in conversation with somebody here in India, with another friend from Mumbai. I'm from Bangalore, so I'm sure you're familiar with Mumbai. And
Yes.
you would have probably also heard it as Bombay earlier. So
Yes, sure.
So
I've been
so
there.
in fact, oh, you have? Have you also
Yes.
visited Bangalore?
No, not yet. But Mumbai, yes.
Wonderful. How was your experience? I know it's a little bit of a deviation, but very quick.
Yeah. My experience.
Yeah, of visiting India.
It was 21, 22 years ago. And what is fascinating, I tell you, is the following. I went there because several people wanted to interview me. And now I'm with you. And what are you doing? You interview me. And there is a famous, I think it's the Indian Financial Times or Financial Times. There is
there is the Financial Express, there is the Economic Times and Times of India, so which
it was one of them, so
okay.
famous, and that was the main reason why I had to go to Mumbai. And of course, I was at the time working with Accenture. I visited the offices of Accenture. Accenture in India 20 odd years ago was not the current Accenture in India, as you know. Since then, it grew extremely fast. And
right, those days it was more a consulting. Now it's more a fulfillment. I mean, probably consulting and fulfillment.
That is correct. So it was a very interesting experience. And of course, I give you, that's a personal anecdote. when we eat Indian food in our countries, it's done for us. So it's mild.
Right.
But when you visit friends and colleagues and you speak with journalists in Mumbai, well, the cuisine is done for them, not for me.
That's right.
So that was a thing. And then if we are about anecdote, one thing I found fascinating is that you go in those office centers and where you have the high rise and many people coming there to work. And then next to them, you have an army of people on mopeds with the preparing the food for the lunch and distributing the food. And
Oh yes,
I was
that's not unique to India. That's unique only to Mumbai.
aha.
They are
And
called Dabbawalas, and I
yes,
think BBC has done, and there are award-winning documentaries, multiple people.
yes. And
So
I
that
was I must say I was
oh
fascinated by that.
it is. Incidentally, there were multiple studies done to show that they operate at a Six Sigma level precision,
Mhm. Yeah, so
and
those are
no, no computers those days,
yeah,
and but there was a system in place.
yeah. So you see, and I'm a system engineer, so I'm fascinated by systems.
Absolutely, yes. So coming back, sorry, I thought it was good to just pull you,
Yes, yes, of course.
tickle your 20-year-old memory on that. So
Yes.
how I wanted to talk about it from a point of where you are today to the next phase, whether you could potentially partner with that French entrepreneur I talked about, or the project that I was mentioning that we're working on. But how do you see these things happening in terms of that? This could be potentially done in two ways, right? See, one is, do you see artists coming individually, or do you see them coming as a DAO, right? A distributed autonomous organization. They set it up, and there could be multiple artists who create separate DAOs, and they all plug into your system from a point of providing the rights related data of their art or whatever creation attribute, right? Could be, like you said, photograph, music, video, any of it. So, do you see that your system is built to work with the DAOs, or is your system built from a point of working with? Lately, you must be familiar with this term called distributed autonomous corporation, right? From a which operates in a distributed manner, but in a larger format. So, how do you approach it, or how do you visualize this happening?
Well, we are working for the moment on such a project. So that is the first answer. Briefly, the project is called Musica Periferica. And the word periferica means peripheric. And they mean this by it's music produced by people who are not mainstream musicians.
Oh,
And
right. Okay.
they are coming from remote part of Europe. They are not organized. They don't have managers. They don't have record label. They don't have music publisher, etc. And they are fantastic musicians. And of course, we are one of 9 partners in that big project, and our work is to deal with data management. But the idea to organize them so that they can be remunerated, because they need to be organized to be remunerated. You need to have at least a kind of record label, a kind of music publisher, a kind of distributor to be in relationship with the big platform. If you are not some kind of organization, you cannot really deal with the big platform.
Correct.
So the basic idea was cooperative, right? So you create a cooperative of musicians, which is not a single musician, that's already an organization, which is not a limited company or a corporation, it's a different type, it's a cooperative. And then the cooperative will be the counterpart of the system we are building. Now, interestingly, when we look at cooperative and when we look at DAO, it is not very far apart.
Correct.
So when you look at people currently building DAO and acting today in one or the other jurisdiction, very often they will choose the cooperative legal setting of that jurisdiction to be active. So I personally, I'm a believer in cooperative. Well, my grandmother was running a cooperative, so maybe in my case it's genetic.
Back in Belgium, is it?
Yes, back in Belgium, yes. And it was for food and other things. It was a cooperative mainly in the mining neighborhood around Liège. And those were about shops, right? So where the cooperative was buying together and selling together so that the prices were affordable for proper quality for people who were not really earning a lot of money. So that was the principle of the cooperative.
So today's parlance of DAC would more or less be similar to a cooperative, right? A distributed autonomous corporation versus an organization which is very individual driven versus
I think
multiple.
Both concepts. So the DAO concept and the cooperative concept will learn a lot of each other, I think. And some people think that DAO are utopia. Definitely, it's not utopia because we can operate DAOs already today.
Correct. Wonderful. Yeah. Actually, in this, so obviously one very good part of blockchain technology as such is that it is, in a sense, making a lot of collaborative efforts happening, right? You are necessary to be part of some consortium to build a larger, rewarding and mutually rewarding ecosystem to be made necessary, right? So that seems to be the case where you're working, yes. And that is the way it is developing even here. So
an important concept is that because we have the internet, many things are networked, right. Which means that we are leaving a world of linear value chain, correct. And we are coming in a world of networks of value.
Yeah, and exponential value chain, if I may say.
Yes, but somebody who is today a producer is tomorrow a creator, and the next day a distributor. And I can be a reader of a newspaper, but as soon as I'm commenting online on that newspaper, I become a co-journalist, and some people correct. Are even interacting with me. So, right. and you see that in many forms of entertainment or media, etc. So the co-creation, and when you look at the domain of education, education is a domain of permanent co-creation. Games, right. Games is permanent co-creation. So those are networks. It's not value chain anymore. So I think that is a crucial thing that policymakers, for example, need to understand. Right. You don't regulate a value chain as you regulate a value network.
But the consortiums that you said you're one of the 7 or 9.
9, yes.
9. So is government one of the part of the consortium? Oh, no. It's a private consortium. Excellent.
It's a consortium of commercial companies and not-for-profit companies, which is sponsored by the European Commission.
Oh, fantastic. But when you go out to the public, who would be the face of it? Or do you have some kind of a distributed autonomous corporation where each of you are like a DAO?
I think that will be legacies of the project. So the project is limited in time, right? It's a 2-year project. And the project must have legacies. Otherwise, why should the European Commission sponsor something without legacies, right? And some legacies could very well be cooperative of musicians. What we need to produce as a legacy is a system where independent musicians can declare their rights. So we must do that. So what What we will do will survive the 2 years, of course.
But there are always a dependencies built in, right? So the consortium can't effectively dissolve. Maybe the funding is limited to 2 years, 2 years, right? The grant is
Yeah,
for a project part of 2 years, but
but,
consortium
but
can't.
technically, we could perpetuate it. We could.
Right.
The 9 partners or some of the partners. For the moment, we did not discuss that, but I take note of that because it's a good idea. In another project, we are preparing something for 2024, and recently somebody joined the team and said, "Oh, that's fine, and I want to be part of it." And we need to fund it for that famous event in 2024. But what about the next phase? So it just triggered, as you just triggered in my mind, some members of the consortium could continue the trip, to travel together. You're right, we could.
So
Next to the individual legacies, we could continue to work together. Yes.
Wonderful. So do you, all these consortium members have to be European based? Is it? That's how it works?
In this case, yes.
Okay. And otherwise, you can work with other consortium partners. I mean, anybody from anywhere else can also be part of a consortium from a point of working together.
Yes. Also, I need to be probably more precise, is that to receive money, which makes sense, from the European Commission, you need to be based in the member states of the European Union. Sometimes, for some program, they will say, well, you could also be based in Nigeria or in Canada or India. But those are very specific projects. But what is almost always possible is that somebody from India, an Indian company, can work with a European consortium, and if they don't receive money from the European Commission, because that's taxpayer money, of course, that's perfectly fine. Nobody prevents any group of people, non-profit, commercial, governmental, to work with European consortium.
Wonderful. And I just noticed the time. I think you have a meeting to get to.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Philip. But we should huddle together again to get to our conversation on the future trends and get your perspective on the future and also on the predictions. So we'll catch you soon on that. And for the audience and listeners, I hope you enjoyed this part of our conversation with Philip. And also, once again, he did give us a glimpse of various parts of work that he's done. So thank you so much. Enjoy the ride. And Philip, once again, thank you so much.
And Nanju, thank you very much. And I will have the pleasure to meet you again and discuss about the future.
Thank you. We'll catch you soon.
Bye, Nanju.
Bye-bye.
Bye.